come to me that my love for abstract sounds were the sounds of the air raid siren. Because that's a sound you hear and you don't know the source of it. You're a child. And then the sound of the all clear. Well, that's sort of electronic music.
I feel like I'm traversing time, tapping into frequencies as I'm making sound from fragments of Delia's life, from her music and her voice, her words.
It is raining women's voices as if they were dead.
Sorry, it's just a little too posh.
It's for a drama about a time-travelling doctor.
A more complex sound still is white noise.
Something like that.
By the storm blown down, she'd a broken wing.
Is that sort of thing?
That's incredible.
Milk and honey.
Looking back, there was something at that time, 72, 73, 74, that went wrong.
Okay, recording. Hello, Caroline Catz,
Hi,
Cosey Fanni Tutti. Hello. Caro C here, reporting for duty for Delia Derbyshire Day 2020. So happy Delia Derbyshire Day.
Yay.
Yeah, happy Delia Derbyshire Day to you all too.
And so now we fixed that in the cultural calendar as the 23rd of November. As you'll both know, this was the date that Delia's realisation of the Doctor Who theme first beamed into British living rooms. So here we are with an online content smorgasbord feast this year. And lovely to speak to you both, Caroline Catz and Cosey Fanni Tutti. And you've just had the premiere of the feature Delia Derbyshire, The Myths and Legendary Tapes.
Yeah, we have.
Congratulations on that. I hope that it felt like you got the connection and viewing connection that you wanted and needed after all that work. I'm going to go straight in with the myths side of things, because we all know that there's, especially because Delia's not here, there's plenty of stories that can be reinforced. For example, she stopped making music when she left the BBC, which we're uncovering more and more to find and to let people know that's not the case. And obviously I'm guessing that's part of the myths. And how do you go about telling the story of someone like Delia, of anyone really, especially when they're not here? There's a real mix and balance within the film, I felt, that was really nice between the imaginal and the factual. So although in some way you were busting myths, in some way you were almost wanting, it seemed, to muddy them more so that people didn't have this nice tidy timeline of this woman's life. So how did you approach that? What was your approach for that?
Yeah, I think, rather than making a sort of a linear biopic, that was never really anything that I was interested in doing. I've been fascinated by Delia for, years, as we all have, primarily from hearing the Doctor Who theme tune and how incredibly evocative that is. So she takes you into these worlds, these amazing sound worlds. So when I had discovered that the archive had arrived at that time Manchester University, and it was in David Butler's office at that years ago. I just thought, what else has she created? What else is there? So listening to all of those amazing pieces at that point that he digitized, which weren't that many, but there was some, and they would take you into these different worlds. So starting point A was, here is this incredible resource, this amazing unfiltered resource of Delia's sound world. And I felt like a total imposter looking into, all her boxes and all the stuff that was left in her attic. I mean, really, what do we have from that? Not that much. I mean, there's papers, there's, ephemera, some beautiful drawings and incredible things that were all of her sort of notes. But that wasn't the starting point that I wanted to begin from. I wanted to kind of listen and absorb that. So that was kind of, I decided, I think in my mind, that maybe that's what she wanted us to know about her. That was sort of my instant intuitive response to it, was perhaps the world of Delia lies in this sound, and that was the starting point. Didn't want to do the biopic thing because I didn't feel we had enough information anyway. There's no biography. And also, I wanted to sort of try and probe themes that I thought were present in Delia's life, she'd created these amazing poetic collages and these atmospheric soundscapes, and they appeared to be these intriguing expressions of her inner world. And I don't know, in the end, I think I ended up with a portrait of Delia that was kind of filtered through a mix of observation and imagination. That's a very long answer, but that's wonderful. Kind of bringing all the bits together. Yeah,
it's interesting what you say about the archive. I never forget, like one girl, we took it for her 80th anniversary, our 80th anniversary project, Heritage Lottery Fund project. We worked at 2 schools. And one girl said, I can't read Delia's writing. And I said, well, if you think about it, she wasn't writing it for you to read. It's almost like her diary. That was her private, her private world. And this girl's just, her face just lit up, realizing, oh yeah, this wasn't for, public. But at the same time, you're right. There's some kind of documentation, and therefore wanting that to be heard.
I think that whilst, when I went to the archive and was listening to this stuff, it was like I felt like, I'm not a musician, so I can interpret this in my way, and it's an intuitive way, and it created thoughts and ideas about the sort of person she might be. But that's when I started to feel kind of down the line, once we got our commission for this longer form film, I felt like I need to collaborate with a musician on this, and I need somebody that is singular and fascinating, and who's fascinated me as much as I feel fascinated by Delia. And of course, that's where Cosey comes into, certainly to my part of the story. Fantastic. Of how to tell Delia's story. And so that was a whole other layer into it that really surprised me, that I didn't expect was going to happen, actually. So
And how was that for you, Cosey, in terms of, for me, the first time I connected with the archive was, how was that for you?
Well, I was surprised, really, excited when you came up and asked me if I'd be interested in doing it, because obviously I knew all about Delia's music, but I'd never thought of her in terms of a film being made about her in that way. I'd always listened to, I don't know about you, Caro, but whenever I listened to Delia, I was really focused on the sound, and that was my whole thing with her, is that when I listened to it, initially when we went to the archive together, when we had access to the audio files, the digital, when they've been digitized, we sat there with headphones on together, and we'd be both going, oh, listen to this, to each other. And then I'd be going, oh, it's just like a sound I've just recorded for my album. And so there was this wonderful link immediately a musical link between me and Delia that hadn't been there before, because our styles are so different. When I think about what my music's like compared to hers, it is very different. But when I listened to her files, the initial source material that she was going to do, that she laid down and then was ready to manipulate it, or she'd already manipulated a very basic sound into something else, I thought, God, yeah, that's just like I do, you know, that kind of forensic approach to sound, to get something that's totally your own, that speaks of for you from really deep down inside. You want to sort of externalize those feelings. I mean, for me, it's very different to Delia because she had the sounds had to have a purpose. You know, it was a job for her to do. She had to sort of go by the, you know, by what she was told and where they were supposed to end up and what they were supposed to evoke in listeners as such, or TV programs and stuff. But for me, it's very different. But that's when I really kind of like, got attached to Delia big time.
Yeah, it's a sort of sends you on an Alice in Wonderland. Although you're aware it's a one-way street, so obviously it's projection, but it is it's just really open up so much, doesn't it? Those inner workings, as you say. And you talk about in the film, Cosey, about the points of connection that you found with Delia, including a determination to be heard. Can you unpack any more points of connection that you can think of?
Oh, other than that?
Yeah. Or as well as that, as well, if you want to talk a bit more about that.
No, our determination is not even just to be heard. It's just to do what we want to do, but kind of like frame it around something that we've been asked to do, if you know what I'm saying. Or frame it around something, like for me, not so much for me, but for Delia, definitely. I think she got the sounds out there in the context she was asked to do them in such a unique way that she just presented something and a situation for everyone to sort of springboard off. And I don't think they expected that at all, which I think that's what's wonderful about Delia, is that she did something that was very much herself that ended up being something for everybody. Yeah.
And that very singular way of working and through experimentation. And that's, I think, that idea of working towards something with no idea of what the outcome is going to be or whether or not it's going to be successful. There is something truly radical about that. And that's the other thing about asking Cosey to work with me, was that there's a sort of sense of activism in what Delia, her approach, and I saw that in Cosey as well. And I imagined, I just thought, what would happen if there was this imagined conversation across eras between these two people and their different processes, and that there is a legacy of Delia's approach that I imagined, and I don't know exactly, Cosey, but that you perhaps have absorbed from being a kid yourself, listening to her stuff. And I don't know, that it started off as a hunch, but then the more we got together and started working together on and looking at the archive and listening as well, it felt like that there was a genuine connection there. And so it became the film was very much Cosey's story through sound, and my approach of absorbing what I could understand from the archive from listening in a sort of more performative way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that dance, I mean, I at times I couldn't tell you what exactly was Delia's sound and music and what was yours at time, and I'm guessing that was the intention. That was lovely.
Yeah.
At the same time as
time, didn't it?
Yeah,
right.
It definitely developed. It was almost like it was like making the music. Yeah. Making the film was like composing music. I mean, there were two came together, but they actually merged at one point where, yes, it's about Delia, but it's mainly about what she did with sound. So the sound became really important in terms of, not being able to distinguish the two of us. Not so much in me copying her style, because I wasn't interested in that. Yeah. I just latched on to the kind of sounds that she did for the particular emotional and atmospheric responses she wanted from people. And that was how I clicked into Delia on that level. But her ear was so intensely sensitive, and I think that's something we share as well. Yeah. Very so. Yeah. And the physicality of sound as well. Yeah. To think that she was classically trained, yet she just completely dodged that one and went in a different direction completely. Although she sort of like utilised her knowledge of that.
Yeah, I know quite a lot of electronic composers who have gone that way, through that path, if you like. One thing I really loved was how you were seen. You were part of you were seen, and not only do you not normally see that with film composers, that's also for me it's quite a thing. I was talking to Nainita Desai recently, film composer, and she was absolutely in love with the Radiophonic Workshop and really wanted to work for the Radiophonic Workshop. And we were talking about how it was unseen. It was generally unseen work. So I'm really interested in that decision and that experience, for both of you, really, in terms, especially experience for Cosey and that decision in terms of directorially. What made you think, we want her to be seen. She wants to be part of. We want her to be part of it.
I said I didn't want to be seen.
Yes, that was the first rule number one.
I'm not going to be in the film. I'm not going to talk in the film or be visible.
But at that point, I didn't think you were going to be.
No.
What was written
about the development of
exactly
working together.
So it wasn't like I duped Cosey into it and pulled her in, or put a gun to her head or anything. It was in the script. I had this space that was a studio space that was a sort of a place that was like the engine room of Delia's story, where she would come and make pieces and also talk to camera about where she was at that point in the story. And then we'd jump out maybe into archive, we'd jump out into interview, we'd jump out into a scene about that point. And that sort of worked. But the thing that troubled me always was, but who's she talking to? I knew who she was talking to, sort of, but she was kind of talking to me, because it came from the short. In the short was a fantasy of Delia appearing in a car park or in a dilapidated space and just sitting on a sofa and telling me about herself. That's how the whole thing started. And then once I met Cosey, I suddenly thought, wouldn't it be amazing? We're making a film about a composer. If we could have the composer of the score being in the scoring the life of a composer, and I wanted to see what that was. I really wanted to understand, like sort of pulling the curtain behind the curtain and seeing sort of the workings. And we do that very much within the film anyway. We're exposing the fact that this is a conceit. This is a story told by actors about a person, and I was very, very clear about that from the beginning, that I wanted it. This is my version of from what I understand. And I felt like, I think often with biopics, although I've enjoyed quite a few of them, there's always that point where there's that sort of sadness where you just think, but it's not the person, but I want the person, and it's not the person. So I was very keen to kind of always keep reminding us that this isn't her. This is a manifestation through sound and through performance. Yeah.
But you are a performer, aren't you? Because you play live. So in a sense, did that therefore become natural enough during that process? In terms of with the film, like at the beginning saying, no, I don't want to be on screen, and then towards the end?
Well, because it became so obvious to us that it couldn't just be a superficial connection with Delia where I did the sound, because then when I got the script, there was foley involved, and we were sat around the table, and there was kind of like a moment when we all looked up, you, me and Flo, and said, well, she did foley, so why aren't I doing the foley as well? Because that would, and that helped a lot for me, because by doing that foley, I also found a load of other sounds, obviously, on my way there, which I could use. And it was, I don't know, going to be in it as a performance, because I'm not a performer, I'm not an actor. That's why I didn't want to be in it. But as a performance as such, I was happy to do that, because then I could take the equipment that I'd used to do it, well, some of it, not all of it, from the studio, and then bring it into the studio that Caroline had created on set, and then merge it with Delia's studio, which was absolutely wonderful to do that. Because like you said, Caroline, you have Delia, and then you have what happened in the future from what how she'd influenced me since a child, So I was kind of happy with that in the end, because then there was an interaction between us as well, which wasn't kind of recognised on film, but it kind of suggested that whole thing of what Caroline was saying, that Delia's influence over the years after she'd gone and so on, and how it built up in me and other musicians as well.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. I think that's what you could feel. You could feel, and then obviously I'm in the world, so maybe I'm a bit more involved in it. I mean, you could feel that lineage. You could feel that, you could feel that honouring at the same time as almost, they were the bedrock of, British electronic music, at least, if not wider.
Yeah, and I was also very aware about her as an individual as well. When we did that piece of being an individualist, I was very aware of that I didn't want to step on her toes.
Yeah.
In that respect, she had to be given the space to be herself. That's what the film was about,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was the result of what she'd done, and I was lucky to be, I've got all that. So,
I think that that space of Cosey, Delia, the joint studio, which was, our amazing production designer, you mentioned Flo, Felicity Hickson, Flo, we had this sort of table at the back, which was just sort of full of objects, shared objects, and they were it had Delia's lampshade on it. It had various kind of. It was like we wanted it to be a sort of a museum. We called it the museum table, didn't we? And it's where we had, pieces of tape. It's where we had the block for the splicing block. It's where we had various little bits of instruments and things that we'd picked up and imagined that Delia might have, and certain things that we'd seen in her boxes that we just put out there, or replicas of those things, and put them out there. So it was kind of a very symbolic thing. But whenever Delia would take one of those things and go into a scene with it, Cosey would then pick it up and make a sound with it. So there became this sort of rhythm and a dance that did kind of, it wasn't scripted, but it became obvious what we needed to do when we were on set. But, again, all of that room and that space was definitely about, exposing the fact that we are telling this story. It's a story that we're imagining. We're looking at the difference. We're looking at, and the film is for me. I was hoping what I wanted it to do is between the imagination and between memory. Who is the person? Who is the person that becomes disseminated amongst us, sort of culturally and personally, and I think that's just what happens to all people. You try and tell a story. There is no one truth. There's not one definitive truth about anybody's life. So wanted to encapsulate that in some way.
Yeah, fab. Let's talk gear. So firstly, noticed was all the lovely authentic equipment you did manage to access, and I'm interested where you accessed that. At the same time, as I really loved that the Delaware giant synth was basically 2D. It was printed on just on paper or something, and it really worked. It's like, because then it almost reminded me of how they talk about theatre for the mind. A lot of the radiophonic, especially work for radio, being the theatre of the mind. And how that allowed more imagination in a sense, because you weren't confronted by the actual beast of a synthesizer that they had in there at one point, that she did her version of the Doctor Who theme that she hated in 1970. One, how was that, trying to access all that equipment, and secondly, were you already familiar with any of those tools, Cosey?
I didn't access those for Caroline. Felicity accessed all those.
Yeah, well, I'll just jump in quick, because then that's about the synthesizer. It was to scale, so it's exactly this. That was the space it would take.
Yeah,
it had the leatherette padding on the front of it, and actually, very kindly, Daniel Miller from Mute, who Cosey introduced me to sort of over email, very kindly allowed us to photograph his very own one.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I see.
So Cosey, there was a connection there. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. We kind of to and froed about equipment quite a lot, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah. So I'll just go to Caroline first. And sorry, that was 2 questions at once. And the first one being, how was that accessing all that equipment?
Well, yeah, I mean, things like that we made. VCS3 we made. It was easier to get hold of a VCS3, but almost impossible to get the Delaware, really. There's just none around. I mean, I think Daniel's probably one of the only ones in the country. I think there's a couple, isn't there? 2 or 3. Wow. Chris Carter, amazing resource of information and places to go to find amazing things. I mean, really, Chris was incredible, wasn't he, Cosey?
Yeah.
And he talked to Felicity Hickson, our production designer, and we also were in touch with vintage hire companies who had some of the specialised equipment. And then this incredible prop maker, Callum Hickey, who invented things like the Crystal Palace and and the Kaleidophon and all kinds of things.
Yeah. So the Crystal Palace is at the National Science and Media Museum in Bradford. We're doing a project around the Ready Furniture Workshop there at the moment, and they have a lot of the objects, like the Do Not Fiddle one that you had. They've got that, and I think they've got the lampshade as well, and then they've also got this Crystal Palace thing which Dick Mills was telling me about, and it's basically capacitor sequencer. What? Way before its time. And in terms of your familiarity with any, maybe, I don't know, did you work with tape, Cosey? And also how you sort of, again, those points of connection in terms of equipment.
Yeah, I worked with anything I could get my hands on, but tape was something that I had to get into. And luckily managed to score an old BBC Nagra, so that was useful because we got rid of our tape recorders years ago, So that was really, really useful. So I got into I did a lot of tape loops for the soundtrack and for when I was on set, because we had to do specific scenes with particular audio for the 2 studios. So that was fantastic to get into tape again and making loops that were hooked all around our studio. So it became kind of like a weird hybrid in our studio. We had all our modern equipment and then all this old grungy stuff, on a separate table, all laid out and hooked up to my laptop and using Ableton, and everything was used to try, to take the lovely sound that you get off tape and use that in its own right, because it has a very different sound to it and warmth to it as well. And then we also managed finally to get Cynthia, so that came in. I had some of Delia's dope sheets for the BCS3, so I used those, and they were like my starting points for getting all kinds of stuff like the sirens, because I was kind of like wanting to do my own, like Delia. That's where we connect as well, is that, going through all the audio tapes and using some of those, and we're talking about it and saying it was very kind of homeopathic in a way, where Delia was there, she was distilled into the sounds, and so she's like in there, the essence of Delia, which was wonderful. So I used everything. And then I had I was really lucky that Jason at Instra, I don't know if you know Instra, back up in Scotland, the makeup modules, but he had a first generation of Aluba, which was like having 2 tape machines in a tiny little module. So Chris put together this wonderful little set for me, so that I could, when we went to do the filming at Twickenham, I had the modern equivalent of the tape recorders that could loop, and then obviously, I think you've heard about them. They've been out a while now, but I kind of beta tested that for them for the Delia film. So I was really, really grateful for that, because it was amazing to be able to do that and do it live while we were filming.
Those live sounds were brilliant. Yeah.
So we had live sound on set, which was an added thing, which was lovely.
Yeah. And do you have any favourite synthesizers or pieces of kit yourself, Cosey, that have sort of stuck with you and been your faithful toys or tools?
Strangely enough, I'm not a synth person, which is another connection.
Okay.
Actually, I'm not. I don't mind, but I like just sampling and then manipulating as much as I can, whether I'm doing it digitally or music concrete or whatever. That's my thing. Even with my guitar, I don't like anything vanilla, basically. As long as I can mess it up, I'm happy.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Can I say what my favourite bit of your kit was? Not that it's relevant, but I'm going to say, what was that amazing, the strip?
Oh, the ribbon, yeah. We had a tape head on a cable that went into a module, and I'd taped Delia onto a piece of tape, and we put it on the old ribbon strip that we used to use live, stuck it down with good sticky tape, and then the tape head, we could move it across that and just do really fantastic, like fast, slow, and she just came to life, instead of putting it through a tape machine.
Yeah,
wonderful little thing to do.
It was really beautiful. I loved that. I could have played with that in the edit. It was just like I wanted to cut to that every minute, but we did quite a lot. But I would have done hours of the stuff if I could.
And it reminds me of those MIDI controllers. You see that a lot of MIDI controllers now, don't you? The sort of strips that,
to be able to do it physically.
Yeah.
Tape. And taking the tape head out of the machine, I could imagine Delia wanting to do something like that. If only I could just take the tape head and move it along the tape where I want, how fast I want, because you get all the little fragments of sound that way. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Fantastic. Cool. Well, I could talk on for hours. However, to close, I think there's something about, with our work, whether it's our education work or whether it's commissioning artists, Delia sort of seems to take you to new places, which is something that you were saying, Cosey, in terms of your work, but obviously for you, Caroline, as well, with the whole film and your acting element in it. But there's something about her that does capture the imagination. There's already, a catalogue of films, of plays. A charity has been set up in her honour, and theatre. And I wonder if you had any thoughts on why Delia consistently inspires.
It's that singular. For me, I just think it's the singularity. She is, there's a focus and an intensity that about her process, which we discovered from, what we learned during making the film. But when you listen to that, it's effortless. There's no effort. It feels like she just takes you into these incredible worlds, and it's so affecting, and you don't really know how it's working on you, if you see what I mean. It really does feel like magic.
I think for me, it's like, because her sound is so light of heart, and it is, like you said, and it touches you so much, and yet it's come from such in some places, a dark place, and under difficult circumstances, yet she delivered something really beautiful that you can immediately connect with and go into another world. And whether that was behind the reason, and the situation she was in, is that maybe helped get her out of that at certain points. I don't know. Maybe it did, because when you make music, your mood is really important.
And it's a transformative thing, isn't it? It is a transformative thing. Yeah.
And the hours, I think it's just that thing of appreciating the hours and the meditation that would have gone into that, and the fact that however much she wrote it down with all her musical knowledge, she must have heard it in her mind and her head all the time, and that's something that's really affecting, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, well, thank you so much. It's really nice to hear a little bit more insight about the film.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and well done. It must have been one heck of a marathon. So yeah, well done. And thank you so much. And I hope lots more people get to appreciate it next year.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Lovely to see you. See you, everyone.